A young patent clerk sits alone in his modest Bern apartment, scribbling equations that would soon shatter humanity's most fundamental beliefs about reality. This is Albert Einstein in 1905, whose restless mind refused to accept that light, time, and space were what they seemed to be. What drove this rebellious thinker to challenge centuries of scientific certainty? Tonight, we'll discover how a compass given to a sick child would spark questions that revolutionized physics. We'll witness the moment when a simple thought about riding alongside a light beam revealed that time itself could bend and stretch. We'll stand with Einstein as British astronomers confirm his theory during a solar eclipse, transforming an unknown theorist into the world's most famous scientist. And we'll explore how his elegant equations, born from pure curiosity, would unlock both the secret of the stars and the terrible power of the atom. From a silent child who worried his parents, to the gentle genius whose wild hair became synonymous with brilliance. Einstein's journey reminds us that the universe's deepest truths often reveal themselves to those brave enough to question what everyone else accepts. So settle in, let your mind wander among the stars, and join us as we follow the extraordinary path of the man who taught us that space and time are not fixed stages, but dancing partners in the cosmic ballet of existence. In 1879, Ulm, Germany, a peculiar infant entered the world with an unusually large head that worried his grandmother so much, she declared him deformed. Little Albert Einstein's first years passed in concerning silence. He barely spoke until age 3, leading doctors to suspect developmental delays. Yet in the quiet of their modest apartment, something extraordinary was taking shape. His father, Hermann, an electrical engineer with dreams bigger than his business acumen, would bring home magnets and wires, spreading them across the kitchen table like treasures. His mother, Pauline, a talented pianist, filled their evenings with the mathematical precision of Mozart and Bach, the notes cascading through rooms where young Albert sat transfixed, his dark eyes following patterns only he could see. She never knew that these melodies were teaching her strange, quiet son to hear music and mathematics, to sense rhythm in the dance of numbers that would one day describe the cosmos itself. At age 5, illness confined Albert to bed for weeks. His father, hoping to cheer the boy, presented him with a simple compass. What happened next would echo through the history of science. The child stared at the quivering needle with an intensity that startled his parents. No matter how he turned the brass case, the needle swung back to north with unwavering certainty. Here was his first glimpse of the invisible forces that rule our world, mysterious, consistent, more real than the furniture around him. He would later recall this moment as his first religious experience, though the God he sensed was not the one from his Hebrew lessons, but something vast and mathematical, whispering through magnetic fields. For hours he watched, his small fingers trembling as they rotated the compass, his mind already reaching for questions that wouldn't fully form for decades. Why north? What invisible hand guided the needle? In that childhood sick room, the universe had claimed another seeker, planting seeds of wonder that would grow into revolutionary understanding. The Einstein family's life resembled that restless compass needle, constantly seeking equilibrium but never quite finding it. Hermann's electrical business ventures failed with dispiriting regularity, forcing relocations from Ulm to Munich, each move stripping away another layer of stability. Young Albert learned to pack his few possessions, books mostly, and that cherished compass, with the efficiency of a nomad. Yet these upheavals gifted him something precious, the understanding that home wasn't walls and addresses, but a state of mind, a portable universe of curiosity he could carry anywhere. While other children rooted themselves in neighborhoods and traditions, Einstein was learning to find comfort in questions rather than answers, to make friends with uncertainty itself. This early rootlessness would serve him well when he later wandered through the landscapes of theoretical physics, comfortable in territories where others felt lost, at home in the space between knowing and not knowing. Munich's Luitpold Gymnasium stood like a Prussian fortress of education, its gray walls echoing with the sharp commands of teachers who prized obedience above understanding. 12-year-old Einstein entered this world of rigid discipline like a square peg approaching a round hole. The teachers, with their waxed mustaches and military bearing, demanded rote memorization of Latin declensions and historical dates. They wanted students who could recite, not think. Einstein's questions: why must we accept Euclid's parallel postulate? What makes these grammatical rules true? Met with stern rebukes. One teacher famously told him he would never amount to anything, that his very presence disrupted the class. The boy's rebellion wasn't loud or violent. It was the quiet resistance of a mind that refused to be molded. He would sit in the back row, his thoughts wandering to the books hidden in his desk, Kant's Critique of Pure Reason, borrowed from a family friend. Its pages speaking of space and time as forms of human perception rather than absolute realities. While his classmates parroted lessons, Einstein was already learning to distrust authority, to value the question more than the answer, developing the intellectual courage that would later allow him to challenge Newton himself. Late into the Munich nights while his family slept, teenage Einstein inhabited a secret world illuminated by candlelight and boundless curiosity. His uncle Jakob, recognizing the boy's hunger, had introduced him to algebra, calling it a merry science where we hunt for a little animal whose name we don't know, so we call it X. But Einstein had quickly moved beyond such games. Now he devoured Kant's philosophy with the same fervor he applied to Euclid's geometry, refusing to separate science from the deeper questions of existence. In Kant, he found a kindred spirit who dared to probe the limits of human reason. In Euclid, he discovered beauty so pure it made him weep, until he began to wonder why parallel lines must never meet, why space must be flat. These midnight studies weren't mere academic exercises. They were conversations with the greatest minds in history, preparing him for debates that would reshape humanity's understanding. His mother would find him asleep at his desk, his head pillowed on open books, equations and philosophical arguments blending in his dreams into something entirely new. At 16, riding a streetcar through Munich's busy streets, Einstein conducted his first great thought experiment. What would happen, he wondered, if he could ride alongside a beam of light? In his mind's eye, he accelerated to that cosmic speed limit, racing neck and neck with electromagnetic waves. According to the physics he'd learned, he should see a frozen wave, light standing still like a photograph, but this made no sense. Maxwell's equations demanded that light always move at the same speed. The paradox gnawed at him through the rattling journey, through dinner, through another sleepless night. This playful mental exercise, born from a teenager's daydream, had accidentally struck at the heart of a fundamental contradiction in physics. The seed was planted for special relativity, though it would take another decade to bloom. He didn't yet have the mathematics or the maturity to resolve the paradox. But he had something perhaps more valuable, the ability to play with ideas like toys, to find profound questions in simple scenarios that others dismissed as meaningless. The shadow of Hermann Einstein's failures grew longer with each passing year. At family dinners, Albert watched his father's shoulders slump under the weight of another bankrupted venture, another factory closed, another dream dissolved. The electrical age was dawning, fortunes were being made. Yet Hermann's brilliant technical mind couldn't translate into business success. These scenes of quiet desperation taught young Albert a profound lesson. Intelligence alone guaranteed nothing in this world. The practical realm could crush even the most gifted, reducing them to apologetic shells. Perhaps this was why Albert increasingly turned to the abstract world of theoretical physics, where truth wasn't subject to market forces or creditors' demands. In equations, he found a purity his father never could achieve in business. Yet he loved his father deeply, seeing in Hermann's gentle persistence a different kind of heroism, the courage to keep dreaming despite repeated defeats. This would later fuel Einstein's own determination to pursue truth regardless of practical obstacles, to seek success in realms where his father had found only frustration. The Swiss Federal Polytechnic in Zurich represented Einstein's first real chance at formal scientific education, making his failure to gain admission all the more devastating. He had sailed through the mathematics and physics portions of the entrance exam, but stumbled badly on languages and biology. The rejection letter arrived like a slap, confirmation of what his Munich teachers had always said. He wasn't suited for academic success. Yet this failure would prove to be a hidden blessing. Redirected to the Swiss cantonal school in Aarau, Einstein found himself in an educational paradise. Unlike the authoritarian German system, Swiss teachers encouraged questions, valued creativity, and treated students as thinking beings rather than vessels to be filled. Here, his rebellious spirit wasn't a liability, but an asset. The year in Aarau didn't just prepare him for the Polytechnic, it freed his mind from the rigid thinking patterns that constrained his more traditionally trained peers. Sometimes the path to revolution requires a detour through failure. In Aarau's progressive atmosphere, Einstein's intellectual and emotional life bloomed simultaneously. Enter Mileva Marek, one of the few women studying physics at the Polytechnic, her dark eyes blazing with intelligence that matched his own. Their relationship began in the library, voices hushed as they debated electromagnetic fields and differential equations. She was brilliant, ambitious, walking a harder path than any man in their program simply by virtue of her gender. In Mileva, Einstein found not just romantic love, but intellectual partnership. Their late-night discussions ranged from Maxwell's equations to women's rights, from the nature of light to the nature of marriage in a changing world. Love letters flew between them, filled with equations and endearments in equal measure. How happy and proud I will be when the two of us together will have brought our work on relative motion to a successful conclusion, he wrote, already imagining their shared future in science. Yet even then, shadows gathered. His family disapproved of her Serbian background, her slight limp, her fierce independence. The same qualities that attracted Albert would eventually create tensions neither could resolve. But in these early days, their minds and hearts beat in synchrony. The libraries of Aarau became Einstein's true university. While his classmates studied assigned texts, he hunted for deeper truths in the works of Maxwell, Lorentz, and Boltzmann. Reading Maxwell's treatise on electromagnetism, his pulse quickened as he recognized subtle contradictions everyone else seemed to ignore. Maxwell's equations suggested that light speed should be constant, yet this conflicted with the principle of relative motion everyone accepted as obvious. How could light maintain the same speed for all observers, regardless of their motion? The question was so simple a child might ask it, yet so profound that none of his professors had satisfactory answers. Lorentz had developed mathematical transformations to reconcile the conflict, but they felt artificial, like bandages on a wound that needed surgery. Einstein sensed that the real solution required abandoning some fundamental assumption about reality itself. In those quiet library hours, surrounded by centuries of accumulated knowledge, he was learning to trust his instincts over authority, to believe that a 20-year-old student might see what the giants had missed. The death of Hermann Einstein in 1902 shattered whatever remained of Albert's childhood. On his deathbed, Hermann made one final request, that his son abandon his impractical pursuit of physics and take up electrical engineering, find steady work, build a stable life. The dying man's words carried the weight of all his own failures, his desperate wish to spare his son similar disappointments. Albert held his father's hand, unable to promise what Hermann wanted to hear. The conflict between familial duty and intellectual calling had never been sharper. How could he explain that theoretical physics wasn't just his career, but his calling, that abandoning it would be a kind of death? In the days following the funeral, Einstein walked alone through Milan's streets, wrestling with grief and guilt. Yet from this anguish emerged a fierce determination. He would pursue physics not despite his father's wishes, but because of them, to achieve the success that had eluded Hermann just in a different realm. The best way to honor his father's memory was to refuse his final request. After graduating from the Polytechnic, Einstein discovered that a diploma didn't guarantee employment, especially for someone who had irritated most of his professors with constant questioning. Rejection letters accumulated like snow. Teaching positions that should have been his by right of intellect went to more compliant students. He took temporary tutoring jobs, private lessons for wealthy children who cared nothing for the beauty of mathematics. Each rejection strengthened his resolve while deepening his isolation. The academic world that should have welcomed his original thinking instead punished it. During one particularly low period, he survived on little more than bread and determination, his clothes growing shabby, his health declining. Yet in letters to Mileva, his enthusiasm never dimmed. God created the donkey and gave him a thick skin, he wrote, developing the emotional armor that would serve him through decades of scientific battles. These lean years taught him to find validation from within, to trust his ideas even when the entire establishment disagreed. The birth of his daughter Liesl in 1902 brought unexpected joy shadowed by social scandal. Mileva had returned to her parents' home in Serbia for the birth, while Einstein remained in Switzerland, desperately seeking work. An illegitimate child could destroy both their careers before they began. The letters between them during this period reveal profound tenderness mixed with practical terror. Is she healthy? Does she cry much? What are her eyes like? Einstein wrote. A young father separated from his firstborn by distance and social convention. The fate of Liesl remains one of history's mysteries. She disappears from all records after infancy, possibly given up for adoption, possibly lost to scarlet fever. This personal tragedy, barely mentioned in Einstein's later writings, marked him deeply. The tension between growing scientific ambition and complex family responsibilities would haunt him throughout life. In choosing between conventional respectability and intellectual freedom, Einstein was learning that genius extracts its own cruel prices. Through the Swiss countryside, Einstein developed his peculiar method of thinking. Long, solitary walks became his laboratory, his footsteps keeping time like a metronome, while his mind manipulated trains, clocks, and light beams in thought experiments of increasing sophistication. He would imagine himself on a train platform watching another train pass. Which was really moving? Both? Neither? The question that seemed simple to others revealed profound complexities to Einstein. He pictured clocks at different points along the trains, tried to synchronize them, and realized that simultaneity itself might be relative. Farmers watching this strange young man walk past their fields, gesturing at empty air and muttering about time, must have thought him mad. Yet, in these pastoral wanderings, Einstein was conducting experiments more revolutionary than anything in Europe's great laboratories. The rhythm of walking seemed to organize his thoughts, each footfall bringing him closer to truths that had eluded humanity since Newton. Nature became his collaborator, the Swiss Alps his blackboard, solitude his essential companion in wrestling with the cosmos. Michel Bessot provided the one mind capable of following Einstein into his theoretical wilderness. An engineer 6 years Einstein's senior, Bessot possessed the rare combination of mathematical competence and intellectual humility that made him the perfect sounding board. Their friendship, begun at the Polytechnic, deepened during long evening discussions that Bessot's wife learned to accept as necessary fuel for both men's souls. "You are my best and most valuable sounding board in all of Europe," Einstein would later write. Together they dissected the concept of absolute time that everyone took for granted. What did it mean to say two events happened at the same time if they occurred in different places? How would you know? The more they probed, the more the solid ground of classical physics began to feel like quicksand. Bessot didn't always understand Einstein's leaps of logic, but he asked the right questions, provided the resistance against which Einstein could sharpen his ideas. In May 1905, after a particularly intense discussion about synchronized clocks, Einstein would have his breakthrough insight about the relativity of simultaneity, rushing to thank Bessot for being the catalyst. The photoelectric effect haunted Einstein's thoughts during this period, representing another crack in classical physics' foundation. When light struck certain metals, it knocked out electrons. But the energy of these electrons depended on light's frequency, not its intensity. This made no sense if light was a wave. A bigger wave should hit harder. Max Planck had introduced the idea of energy quanta to explain blackbody radiation. But even Planck thought this was just a mathematical trick. Einstein was beginning to suspect something far more radical. That light itself came in discrete packets, what would later be called photons. This meant challenging not just current theories, but the wave theory of light that had triumphed since the early 1800s. Even his heroes like Lorentz would resist this idea. Yet Einstein couldn't ignore where the mathematics led. His willingness to follow logic into heretical territory, to challenge even those he admired most, revealed the intellectual courage that separated him from talented contemporaries who saw the same evidence but couldn't make the revolutionary leap. The loneliness of true originality pressed upon Einstein during these years like a physical weight. His ideas had progressed so far beyond conventional physics that even sympathetic colleagues struggled to follow his reasoning. At scientific gatherings, he would begin explaining his thoughts about relative time or light quanta, only to watch confusion cloud his listeners' faces. They weren't stupid. Many were brilliant scientists. But Einstein was speaking a language that didn't yet exist, describing a universe that contradicted basic assumptions everyone shared. This intellectual isolation might have driven a weaker mind to doubt or compromise. Instead, it forced Einstein deeper into himself, into that portable universe of curiosity he'd carried since childhood. He learned to find companionship in equations, friendship in the pure logic of mathematics. The very isolation that pained him also protected his ideas from premature dilution, allowing them to develop their full revolutionary potential. In the depths of loneliness, Einstein was gestating ideas that would soon transform humanity's vision of reality. His appointment to the Swiss Patent Office in 1902 initially felt like defeat, confirmation that the academic world had no place for him. Friends commiserated, seeing it as a waste of his talents. Yet as Einstein settled into his examiner's desk, evaluating applications for electromagnetic devices and synchronization mechanisms, he discovered an unexpected gift. The job required only part of his formidable mental capacity, leaving the rest free to wander. His supervisor, though occasionally irritated by the equations covering Einstein's desk, proved remarkably tolerant. The regular salary freed him from financial anxiety for the first time in years. Most importantly, the patent office's technical problems, especially those involving synchronized clocks and electromagnetic signals, fed directly into his theoretical obsessions. What seemed like career failure was actually the perfect incubator for genius. In this modest government office, surrounded by the clicking of typewriters and rustling of papers, Einstein found the combination of stability and intellectual freedom necessary for the most productive period in physics history. The universe, it seemed, had conspired to place him exactly where he needed to be. As 1904 turned to 1905, Einstein stood on the precipice of his miracle year, though he couldn't yet see the glory that awaited. The ideas that had tortured him for years were finally crystallizing into mathematical form, special related. Behind the mahogany desk of Patent Office Examination Room 3, Einstein spent his days evaluating electromagnetic device applications, while his mind secretly wrestled with the fundamental contradictions between Newton's mechanics and Maxwell's electromagnetism that kept him awake at night. The morning light filtered through tall windows as he reviewed yet another proposal for an improved telegraph system. His practiced eye quickly identified the essential principles, while his deeper consciousness churned through equations that had no place in this bureaucratic setting. His colleagues saw a diligent examiner, perhaps a bit distracted, certainly competent. They couldn't see the revolutionary thoughts taking shape behind those gentle eyes, the way each patent application fed his understanding of synchronized time signals and electromagnetic phenomena. The very problems that inventors struggle to solve practically were teaching Einstein to think about the theoretical foundations of physics in entirely new ways. Here, in this unlikely cathedral of mundane technology, the universe was whispering its secrets to a patient listener. The routine of patent examination sharpened Einstein's ability to identify the essential principles underlying complex technical problems, unknowingly training his mind for the conceptual breakthroughs that would soon revolutionize humanity's understanding of physical reality. Each application demanded that he strip away unnecessary complications to reveal the core innovation, if any existed. This daily practice of intellectual distillation became second nature. teaching him to see past mathematical formalism to the physical essence beneath. When an inventor claimed a perpetual motion machine, Einstein didn't just reject it. He traced exactly where the proposal violated conservation laws, strengthening his own grasp of these fundamental principles. The discipline required to write clear, concise patent reports honed his ability to express complex ideas simply. This skill would prove invaluable when explaining relativity to a skeptical world. His supervisor, Friedrich Haller, demanded precision and clarity, unknowingly preparing Einstein for the even more demanding task of overturning 3 centuries of Newtonian certainty. During stolen moments between patent reviews, Einstein scribbled equations on government stationery. His revolutionary insights into the nature of light and motion, hiding in plain sight among mundane bureaucratic paperwork. A calculation about the photoelectric effect might share a page with notes on an improved typewriter mechanism. His desk drawer contained a curious mixture: patent application forms, office supplies, and sheets covered with tensor notation that would have baffled even his scientifically trained colleagues. He developed a sixth sense for approaching footsteps, sliding theoretical work beneath patent files with practiced ease. Yet these furtive moments of creation carried an electric thrill, the delicious tension of pursuing cosmic truth while supposedly evaluating commercial gadgets. The contrast sharpened his focus, made each theoretical insight more precious for being stolen from routine duties. In the quiet intervals between the clicking of typewriters and the shuffling of papers, Einstein was rewriting the laws of the universe. His collaboration with Conrad Habicht and Maurice Solovine in their informal Olympia Academy created an intellectual sanctuary where 3 young minds dissected the philosophical implications of scientific discovery over cheap wine and endless conversation. They met in Einstein's modest apartment, transforming the cramped space into a forum for ideas that spanned from ancient philosophy to cutting-edge physics. Solovine brought his passion for literature and philosophy, Habicht his mathematical rigor, while Einstein provided the unifying vision that connected disparate fields of thought. They read Hume's skepticism about causation, Mach's critique of absolute space, Poincaré's essays on the philosophy of science. Each work became fodder for debates that stretched past midnight, voices rising with excitement as they traced connections between epistemology and physics. Mileva would sometimes join them, her own scientific training adding another dimension to their discussions. Though increasingly, she felt excluded from this masculine intellectual brotherhood. These sessions weren't mere academic exercises. They were training grounds for revolutionary thinking, spaces where questioning everything was not just permitted, but required. The weight of supporting his growing family while pursuing theoretical physics created constant tension in Einstein's daily life. Mileva's increasing isolation and his own consuming scientific obsessions strained their marriage to breaking point. Their second son, Eduard, had arrived in 1910, adding financial pressure to an already precarious household budget. Mileva, once his intellectual companion, found herself trapped in domestic routines while Albert disappeared into equations that she could no longer follow. Her own scientific dreams had withered, sacrificed to motherhood and her husband's career. Einstein felt the guilt but couldn't stop the momentum of his thoughts, couldn't pretend that patent examining and family life satisfied his cosmic hunger. He would return home late, distracted, his mind still wrestling with field equations while his children clamored for attention. The apartment that had once echoed with shared scientific excitement now rang with the discord of diverging lives. Each day widened the gulf between what Einstein needed to become and what his family needed him to be. Einstein's breakthrough insight about the relativity of simultaneity struck during a casual conversation with Michel Besso about synchronized clocks, the sudden clarity hitting him like lightning as he realized that time itself might not be the absolute constant everyone assumed. They had been walking home from the patent office, discussing the practical problem of synchronizing clocks at different train stations. Besso mentioned the difficulty of ensuring that distant clocks showed exactly the same time. and something clicked in Einstein's mind with almost audible force. He stopped walking, grabbed Besso's arm, his eyes wide with the shock of revelation. What if simultaneity itself was relative? What if two events that appeared simultaneous to one observer might occur at different times for another observer in motion? The implications cascaded through his consciousness. If simultaneity was relative, then time itself must be relative. The absolute time that Newton had built his mechanics upon, that everyone accepted as self-evident truth, was an illusion. Besso watched his friend's face transform with the joy of discovery, though he couldn't yet grasp the full magnitude of what had just been born. Sleepless nights followed this revelation, as Einstein worked feverishly to trace the mathematical implications of relative time. His excitement grew as he discovered that space and time must be fundamentally interconnected in ways no one had ever imagined. His small study became a battlefield of crumpled papers and half-empty coffee cups as he pushed through calculation after calculation. If time was relative, what about space? The mathematics led him inexorably to a stunning conclusion. Space and time weren't separate entities, but aspects of a four-dimensional continuum. Length contraction, time dilation, the impossibility of exceeding light speed, each consequence emerged with mathematical inevitability from his initial insight. Mileva would find him at dawn, still at his desk, his hair wild and eyes bloodshot but blazing with triumph. He tried to explain his discoveries to her, but the gulf between them had grown too wide. She saw only her husband's increasing absence, while he saw the architecture of reality revealing itself through elegant equations. The mathematical elegance of his emerging special relativity theory filled Einstein with almost mystical awe, as equations revealed that mass and energy were different manifestations of the same underlying reality, connected by the cosmic speed limit of light. The simplicity was breathtaking. From just two postulates about the constancy of light speed and the equivalence of inertial frames, an entire new physics emerged. Each mathematical step felt guided by an invisible hand, as if the universe itself was directing his pen. When he derived the Lorentz transformations from first principles, Einstein felt the satisfaction of a musician finding perfect harmony. But the true revelation came when he pushed his equations further, exploring the relationship between energy and momentum in his new framework. The mathematics spoke with crystalline clarity. Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. Such a simple expression, yet it contained within it the secret of the stars, the potential for both creation and destruction on an unimaginable scale. His famous equation EMC2 emerged not as sudden inspiration, but as the inevitable conclusion of rigorous mathematical reasoning, though Einstein could not yet foresee how this simple relationship would one day unlock both the power of stars and the horror of atomic weapons. He stared at the symbols on the page, marveling at their economy. 3 letters, 1 number, yet they encoded a truth that had eluded humanity since the dawn of science. Mass was frozen energy. Energy was liberated mass. And the conversion factor was the square of light's tremendous speed. A tiny amount of matter contained stupendous energy, locked away until the right conditions could release it. Einstein felt no premonition of mushroom clouds or devastated cities. He saw only the beautiful unity underlying nature's apparent diversity. In his patent office sanctuary, reviewing applications for minor improvements to existing technology, he had uncovered a principle that would reshape civilization itself. The completion of his photoelectric effect paper required Einstein to embrace the radical notion that light itself came in discrete packets of energy, forcing him to accept that the universe operated on quantum principles that defied everyday intuition. This was perhaps even more revolutionary than relativity, for it challenged the wave theory of light that had triumphed since Young's double-slit experiment a century earlier. Einstein's own aesthetic sense rebelled against the idea. How could light be both wave and particle? Yet the mathematics was unequivocal. The photoelectric effect made sense only if light delivered its energy in discrete bundles, what he called light quanta. He wrestled with the implications, knowing that this discovery opened a door to a quantum realm where common sense ceased to apply. The irony wasn't lost on him. While developing a theory that restored clarity to space and time, he had simultaneously discovered that nature was fundamentally grainy, discontinuous, probabilistic in ways that would haunt him for the rest of his life. His paper on Brownian motion provided the first definitive proof that atoms actually existed, settling a decades-old debate through mathematical analysis of the random dance of microscopic particles suspended in fluid. Einstein approached the problem with characteristic elegance, showing how the visible jittering of pollen grains in water resulted from invisible molecular collisions. His calculations predicted exactly how far particles should move based on temperature and molecular size, predictions that experimentalists could verify. This wasn't just about proving atoms were real. It was about showing that statistical mechanics, with its probabilistic approach to particle behavior, accurately described nature. The same Einstein who would later resist quantum mechanics was here championing a statistical view of reality, though he saw no contradiction. Atoms might move randomly, but they still obeyed deterministic laws. The dance was chaotic only because of our ignorance of individual molecular motions, not because nature itself was fundamentally uncertain. The miraculous year of 1905 saw Einstein publish 4 papers that would reshape physics forever. Yet he continued his mundane patent office duties with characteristic humility, uncertain whether the scientific community would accept his revolutionary ideas. Each paper addressed a different fundamental problem: the photoelectric effect, Brownian motion, special relativity, and mass energy equivalence. Yet they shared a common thread of bold conceptual leaps supported by rigorous mathematics. Einstein mailed them to Annalen der Physik with the same mixture of confidence and trepidation that any young scientist feels when submitting work for publication. He had no prestigious position, no famous mentor to smooth his path, just ideas that challenged everything physicists thought they knew. Between reviewing patent applications, he anxiously checked for responses, wondering if his papers would be dismissed as the fantasies of an amateur. The silence stretched for weeks, broken finally by acceptance letters that gave no hint of the revolution about to unfold. Max Planck's early recognition of Einstein's work provided crucial validation during a period when most physicists either ignored or actively dismissed the young patent clerk's radical theories about the nature of space, time, and light. Planck, already famous for his quantum hypothesis, immediately grasped the profound importance of special relativity. His letter to Einstein rang with excitement. Here was a theory that resolved the contradictions between mechanics and electromagnetism with mathematical beauty. Planck's endorsement carried enormous weight in German physics circles, transforming Einstein from unknown outsider to serious contender almost overnight. Yet even Planck struggled with some implications, particularly the light quantum hypothesis that seemed to undermine the wave theory he cherished. Their correspondence revealed mutual respect between the established master and the revolutionary newcomer, a relationship that would prove crucial as Einstein navigated the treacherous waters of academic politics and scientific controversy. Einstein's growing reputation in theoretical physics created new opportunities, but also new pressures, as academic positions finally became available, but demanded that he abandon the intellectual freedom that made his breakthrough discoveries possible. The University of Zurich offered him an associate professorship in 1909, a position that should have represented triumph after years of rejection. Yet Einstein felt unexpected ambivalence. The patent office, for all its mundane routine, had provided the perfect combination of financial stability and mental freedom. Teaching would require preparing lectures, grading papers, attending faculty meetings, all activities that would steal time from research. He accepted the position, knowing that academic credibility was necessary for his ideas to gain wider acceptance. But he mourned the loss of those quiet hours when his mind could wander freely through theoretical landscapes. The very success he had craved now threatened to cage the intellectual wildness that made him unique. The transition from patent examiner to university lecturer forced Einstein to articulate his revolutionary ideas to students and colleagues, who often struggled to grasp concepts that challenged everything they learned about classical physics. His first lectures were disasters of enthusiasm over pedagogy. He would begin explaining special relativity, get excited by some subtle point, and launch into mathematical derivations that left his students bewildered. The familiar classroom dynamics of professor and pupil felt artificial to someone who had learned through solitary contemplation and informal discussion. Gradually, he developed his own teaching style, using thought experiments and physical intuition rather than formal mathematical rigor. He would ask students to imagine riding on light beams, to picture clocks on moving trains, to feel in their bones why absolute simultaneity made no sense. Some thrived under this approach, while others yearned for the comfortable certainties of Newtonian mechanics that Einstein was systematically demolishing. His appointment at the University of Zurich marked the beginning of Einstein's academic career. But the demands of teaching and administrative duties left less time for the deep contemplation that fueled his most creative period. Committee meetings about curriculum reform seemed absurd to someone who had just rewritten the fundamental laws of physics. He found himself trapped in conversations about office space and teaching loads, while his mind yearned to explore the implications of his discoveries. The very respectability he had fought to achieve now wrapped around him like a straitjacket. He would escape whenever possible, taking long walks in the Swiss countryside where his thoughts could run free. But the interruptions were constant. Students with questions, colleagues seeking opinions, administrators demanding his presence. The patent office, once a symbol of his exclusion from academic physics, now seemed like a lost paradise of intellectual freedom. The development of general relativity began with Einstein's profound insight about the equivalence of gravitational and inertial mass, leading him to suspect that gravity itself might be a manifestation of curved space-time rather than a mysterious force. The revelation came through another of his thought experiments, imagining a person in a windowless elevator. If the elevator accelerated upward, the passenger would feel pressed to the floor exactly as if gravity had increased. If the elevator were in free fall, the passenger would float as if gravity had vanished. This equivalence between acceleration and gravity seemed too perfect to be coincidence. Perhaps gravity wasn't a force at all, but a consequence of curved space-time, with massive objects bending the cosmic fabric and creating the paths that falling objects followed. The mathematical challenge of expressing this geometrical vision would consume the next 8 years of Einstein's life, pushing him to the very limits of his intellectual capabilities. Years of mathematical struggle followed as Einstein grappled with the tensor calculus necessary to express his geometric vision of gravity, often working 16-hour days while his physical health deteriorated under the strain of intellectual obsession. The mathematics he needed didn't exist in any form accessible to physicists. It lived in the abstract realm of differential geometry that mathematicians had developed for purely theoretical reasons. Einstein, who had always prided himself on physical intuition over mathematical formalism, found himself drowning in indices and covariant derivatives. His notebooks from this period reveal pages of calculations, many leading to dead ends, crossed out in frustration. He would work until his eyes burned and his head pounded, sustained by coffee and the conviction that he was close to something profound. Mileva watched her husband disappear into equations she couldn't follow, their marriage becoming another casualty of Einstein's quest to understand gravity. His collaboration with mathematician Marcel Grossmann became essential, as Einstein realized that his revolutionary physical insights required mathematical tools that lay beyond his current expertise, forcing him to master entirely new branches of mathematics. Grossmann, his old friend from student days, possessed the mathematical sophistication Einstein lacked. Together they explored Riemann's geometry, tensor analysis, and the abstract mathematics of curved spaces. Einstein would explain his physical vision, how massive objects should curve spacetime, while Grossmann translated these ideas into rigorous mathematical language. The collaboration was sometimes frustrating. as Einstein's physical intuition raced ahead of their mathematical ability to express it. They made false starts, pursuing mathematical approaches that seemed promising but ultimately failed to capture the full richness of Einstein's vision. Yet each failure taught them something, brought them closer to the mathematical framework that could encode gravity as geometry. The outbreak of World War I created a painful backdrop for Einstein's scientific work, as his pacifist convictions clashed with the nationalist fervor sweeping through German academic circles, isolating him both personally and professionally. While his colleagues signed manifestos supporting German military actions, Einstein joined the lonely voices calling for peace and international cooperation. The same professors who admired his physics now viewed him with suspicion, this Swiss Jew who refused to embrace German nationalism. Scientific meetings became political battlegrounds, where Einstein's pacifism marked him as an outsider. The war made international collaboration impossible, cutting him off from developments in British and French physics. Yet this isolation had an unexpected benefit. With fewer distractions and social obligations, Einstein could focus entirely on general relativity. The thunder of artillery might echo across Europe, but in his Berlin study, Einstein pursued equations that described the peaceful dance of planets around stars. His move to Berlin in 1914 placed Einstein at the center of German physics, but also exposed him to political pressures and On May 29, 1919, as Arthur Eddington's expedition photographed stars near the eclipsed sun from Principe Island, Einstein waits anxiously in Berlin, knowing that these images will either validate his theory of curved spacetime or destroy a decade of revolutionary work. The morning had dawned gray and overcast in the German capital, matching Einstein's mood as he tried to focus on routine correspondence while his mind wandered to that tropical island. There, British astronomers were attempting to photograph starlight bending around the sun. He had staked everything on this prediction, that massive objects warp the very fabric of space and time, causing light to follow curved paths through the cosmos. The mathematics were beautiful, elegant beyond anything he had created before. But mathematics alone couldn't prove physical truth. Only observation could confirm whether his geometric vision of gravity reflected reality or remained merely an exquisite delusion. His hands trembled slightly as he lit his pipe, the familiar ritual bringing no comfort. Somewhere beneath the African sun, photographic plates were either capturing evidence of humanity's deepest insight into cosmic architecture or recording his spectacular failure. The waiting was almost unbearable, each passing hour stretching like the curved space-time he hoped to prove. The telegram arrives on a quiet September afternoon. Through cloud, hopeful Eddington, cryptic words that carry the weight of scientific history. As Einstein realizes that preliminary measurements suggest starlight has indeed bent around the sun's gravitational field, exactly as his equations predicted. He read the message 3 times, his heart racing with each repetition. Through cloud, hopeful, not definitive, not certain, but hopeful. The expedition had faced terrible weather, clouds obscuring the eclipse at crucial moments. Yet somehow Eddington had managed to capture enough data to see the effect. Einstein sank into his study chair, overwhelmed by the implications. If the measurements held up under scrutiny, it meant that his decade of mathematical struggle had revealed fundamental truth about reality. Space wasn't the rigid stage Newton had imagined, but a flexible fabric that massive objects could stretch and distort. Time wasn't the universal metronome ticking identically everywhere, but flowed at different rates depending on gravity's strength. His secretary found him there an hour later, still clutching the telegram, tears streaming down his face, not from joy alone, but from the profound humility of glimpsing nature's deeper architecture. When the Royal Society officially announces that Einstein's predictions match Eddington's observations, the confirmation sends shockwaves through the scientific world, as Newton's absolute space and time crumble before the elegant mathematics of curved space-time. The November meeting in London carried the gravity of a changing worldview. J.J. Thomson, president of the Royal Society, declared it the most important result obtained in connection with the theory of gravitation since Newton's day. The measured deflection of starlight 1.75 arcseconds, matched Einstein's prediction within experimental error, while Newton's theory predicted only half that value. In lecture halls and laboratories across Europe, physicists grappled with the implications. The cosmos was stranger than anyone had imagined, operating according to geometric principles that defied common sense. Some older scientists resisted, clinging to the familiar Newtonian framework that had served physics so well for centuries. But the younger generation embraced the revolution with enthusiasm, recognizing that Einstein had opened doorways to unexplored theoretical territories. The very language of physics would need rewriting, as concepts like straight line and simultaneous lost their absolute meanings in Einstein's curved cosmos. The moment of vindication brings Einstein not jubilation but profound humility, as he grasps that his equations have revealed something fundamental about the universe's architecture, that massive objects literally warp the fabric of reality itself. Alone in his study that evening, Einstein contemplated what his success truly meant. He hadn't invented these relationships. He had merely discovered mathematical language capable of describing what had always been true. The sun had been bending starlight for billions of years before humans evolved to notice. Black holes had been warping space-time to breaking point long before Einstein's equations predicted their existence. He felt less like a creator than an archaeologist who had unearthed cosmic blueprints written in the language of differential geometry. The responsibility weighed on him. His equations predicted phenomena so extreme that even he struggled to accept them. Could space really curve so severely that regions became cut off from the rest of the universe? Could time truly stop at the event horizon of a black hole? The mathematics insisted yes, but Einstein's intuition rebelled. Perhaps there were limits to how far theoretical physics could push into reality's extremes. Newspaper headlines around the world proclaim "Revolution in Science" and "Newton overthrown," transforming Einstein overnight from an obscure theoretical physicist into the most famous scientist on Earth, though he remains bewildered by the sudden public fascination with his abstract mathematical insights. The Times of London led with "Newtonian ideas overthrown," while American papers struggled to explain curved space-time to readers who had never heard of Einstein before. Reporters descended on his Berlin apartment, asking questions that revealed fundamental misunderstandings about what relativity actually meant. No, it didn't mean everything was relative in some philosophical sense. No, it didn't prove that all viewpoints were equally valid. The theory was precise, mathematical, making specific predictions about how clocks ran slower in strong gravitational fields and how space contracted at high velocities. Einstein tried patiently to explain, using analogies about trains and elevators, but the nuances were lost in translation. The public latched onto him as a symbol of incomprehensible genius, the wild-haired professor whose thoughts were too profound for ordinary minds. This caricature both amused and frustrated Einstein, who had always believed that physical truth should be expressible in simple terms once properly understood. The flood of interview requests and speaking invitations overwhelms Einstein, who struggles to explain concepts like curved space-time to journalists and audiences who lack the mathematical background to truly comprehend the revolutionary nature of his discoveries. Each day brought stacks of letters, invitations to speak at universities, requests for popular articles, pleas for Einstein to explain his theory in layman's terms. He accepted what he could, driven by a sense of obligation to share scientific knowledge. But the task proved exhausting. How could he convey the beauty of tensor calculus to audiences who struggled with basic algebra? How could he explain why the speed of light was constant in all reference frames when this fact violated every intuition about motion? He developed a repertoire of thought experiments and analogies, but always felt he was offering shadows of the true theory. The mathematics was the reality. Everything else was approximation. Yet he persisted, writing popular books and giving public lectures, hoping to kindle in others the same sense of wonder that drove his own investigations. If even one young mind caught fire with curiosity about the cosmos, the effort would be worthwhile. His Nobel Prize in Physics arrives in 1921, though ironically awarded for his work on the photoelectric effect. rather than relativity, reflecting the scientific establishment's continued unease with theories that challenge such fundamental assumptions about space and time. The Nobel Committee's citation carefully avoided mentioning relativity, focusing instead on his services to theoretical physics, and especially for his discovery of the law of the photoelectric effect. Einstein understood the politics behind this choice. Relativity remained controversial, with some physicists still hoping to find flaws in its theoretical structure or experimental support. The photoelectric effect was safer ground, its practical applications already evident in emerging technologies. Yet Einstein felt a quiet satisfaction that his quantum work was recognized, even as he grew increasingly uncomfortable with quantum mechanics' probabilistic implications. The prize money went entirely to Mileva as part of their divorce settlement, a promise he had made years earlier when the prize seemed a distant dream. Fame brought complications he had never anticipated: requests for endorsements, political statements, appearances at charity events. The quiet patent examiner had become public property, his time no longer entirely his own. The verification of general relativity opens new frontiers in astronomy, as Einstein realizes his field equations predict the existence of black holes, regions where space-time curves so severely that not even light can escape their gravitational embrace. Karl Schwarzschild had found this solution while serving on the Russian front during World War I, sending his calculations to Einstein just months before dying of illness contracted in the trenches. The mathematics described something monstrous, a point where density became infinite, where the known laws of physics broke down entirely. Einstein initially dismissed such solutions as mathematical curiosities with no physical reality. Surely nature would prevent such extremes from forming. Yet the equations were insistent. Any mass compressed within a certain radius, the Schwarzschild radius, would create an event horizon from which nothing could escape. The implications disturbed Einstein profoundly. Here was a prediction of his beautiful theory that seemed to violate every principle of physical reasonableness. How could information be destroyed? How could causality be maintained if regions of space-time could become permanently disconnected? He spent years seeking ways to prove black holes impossible, but the mathematics remained stubbornly consistent. His application of general relativity to cosmology reveals that the universe itself must be either expanding or contracting, a prediction so startling that Einstein initially introduces a cosmological constant to preserve the notion of a static eternal cosmos. The field equations, when applied to the universe as a whole, refused to describe the unchanging cosmos that everyone from ancient philosophers to modern astronomers assumed. The mathematics demanded evolution, either expansion or contraction, but not stasis. This flew in the face of all observation and intuition. The stars seemed fixed in their constellations. The galaxy, for only one was known then, appeared stable and eternal. Einstein's aesthetic sense rebelled against a universe with a beginning or end. He modified his equations, adding a term that acted like anti-gravity, precisely balanced to hold the cosmos in static equilibrium. This cosmological constant felt artificial, a mathematical trick rather than fundamental physics, but it preserved the eternal universe that philosophy and observation seemed to demand. Einstein couldn't know that Edwin Hubble was already gathering data that would shatter this static vision, revealing a cosmos in dramatic expansion. The growing experimental evidence for quantum mechanics creates a profound intellectual crisis for Einstein, who struggles to accept that nature operates according to probability rather than the deterministic laws he believes must govern physical reality. Each new experiment confirmed quantum mechanics' strange predictions, particles that existed in multiple states until observed, measurements that seemed to create reality rather than reveal it, entangled particles that communicated instantly across vast distances. The mathematics worked perfectly, predicting experimental results with unprecedented precision. Yet the implications made Einstein deeply uncomfortable. Where was the objective reality independent of observation? How could God play dice with individual atomic events? His own work on the photoelectric effect had helped birth this probabilistic monster, but Einstein refused to accept it as final truth. He believed quantum mechanics must be incomplete, a statistical approximation of some deeper deterministic theory yet to be discovered. His colleagues grew frustrated with his resistance. Hadn't relativity taught them to abandon preconceptions about absolute space and time? Why couldn't Einstein make a similar leap regarding determinism and objective reality? His famous declaration that God does not play dice with the universe reflects not religious conviction, but Einstein's deep philosophical commitment to the idea that physical laws should be comprehensible and predictable rather than fundamentally random. The phrase, repeated in various forms throughout his debates with Niels Bohr and other quantum pioneers, became his trademark resistance to quantum indeterminacy. For Einstein, the elegance of physical law lay in its ability to precisely predict future states from present conditions. A universe governed by probability at its deepest level seemed to him a failure of human understanding rather than nature's true character. He spent countless hours devising thought experiments to expose what he saw as quantum mechanics' logical flaws. Yet each challenge was met and overcome by Bohr and others, who had made peace with quantum uncertainty. The debate revealed a fundamental split in physics between those who sought objective reality independent of observation and those who accepted that measurement and reality were inextricably entangled. Einstein stood increasingly alone on his side of this divide, a classical giant in an increasingly quantum world. The rise of Nazi Germany forces Einstein to confront the political implications of his scientific fame, as his Jewish heritage and pacifist beliefs make him a target of increasingly violent anti-Semitic propaganda. By 1932, the attacks had escalated beyond academic jealousy to physical threats. Nazi sympathizers disrupted his lectures, denounced relativity as Jewish physics, and called for his removal from all German institutions. Einstein watched with growing alarm as colleagues who had once respected his work now avoided him in university hallways, fearing association with someone marked as an enemy of the rising regime. His apartment was searched, his papers scrutinized for evidence of communist sympathies. Death threats arrived with disturbing regularity. The country that had nurtured his scientific career was transforming into something monstrous, where racial hatred trumped rational thought. Einstein realized that his visibility made him both a target and a symbol. His every public statement carried weight beyond science, forcing him to choose between silence that might ensure safety and speech that honored his humanitarian convictions. The choice for Einstein was never really in doubt. His decision to emigrate to America in 1933 represents not just a personal escape from persecution, but a symbolic transfer of scientific leadership from Europe to the New World, as Princeton's Institute for Advanced Study becomes his final intellectual home. The departure from Germany felt like tearing out a piece of his soul. Despite everything, German culture had shaped him. Its music, philosophy, and scientific tradition ran deep in his bones. Yet staying meant certain death or imprisonment. As his ship pulled away from European shores, Einstein knew he would never return. Princeton offered sanctuary and freedom, a specially created position with no teaching duties, unlimited time for research, and colleagues who valued ideas over ideology. The small New Jersey town seemed almost comically quiet after Berlin's intensity. But Einstein found peace in tree-lined streets and the rhythms of American academic life. He traded his formal European attire for comfortable sweaters, sailed a small boat on Carnegie Lake, and slowly adapted to a culture that seemed both refreshingly informal and occasionally puzzling in its contradictions. The same country that welcomed him as a refugee would soon ask him to help build humanity's most terrible weapon. The confirmation that the universe is indeed expanding, as predicted by his cosmological equations, leads Einstein to call his cosmological constant the greatest blunder of my life, though modern cosmology will eventually resurrect this concept in the form of dark energy. When Hubble's observations proved that galaxies were racing away from each other, Einstein immediately recognized his error. The universe wasn't static, but expanding, exactly as his unmodified equations had insisted. His aesthetic prejudice for an eternal, unchanging cosmos had led him to miss one of his theory's most profound predictions. The regret ran deep. If he had trusted his mathematics over his philosophical preferences, he could have predicted cosmic expansion years before its observational discovery. The abandoned cosmological constant seemed to represent a failure of scientific courage, a moment when Einstein had let preconceptions cloud theoretical clarity. Yet the story wouldn't end there. Decades later, astronomers would discover that cosmic expansion was accelerating, driven by an unknown dark energy that behaved remarkably like Einstein's discarded constant. Even his mistakes, it seemed, contained profound truths about nature's character. His later years become consumed with the quest for a unified field theory that would merge gravity and electromagnetism into a single mathematical framework, though this dream will ultimately elude even Einstein's extraordinary theoretical abilities. Day after day, he filled notebooks with tensor equations, seeking the master formula that would reveal electromagnetic and gravitational forces as aspects of one geometric unity. Each approach began with promise, perhaps extra dimensions, perhaps more complex geometries, perhaps new mathematical structures altogether. But inevitably, the mathematics would fail to match physical reality. Either the equations became too complex to solve, or their solutions failed to reproduce known physics. Einstein's assistants watched him pursue one mathematical path after another with undiminished enthusiasm. Even as the physics community increasingly viewed his unification efforts as quixotic, string theory and other modern approaches to unification hadn't yet emerged, leaving Einstein to work with mathematical tools inadequate to his ambitions. The loneliness of this quest was profound. Few colleagues shared his conviction that geometric unification was possible, or even desirable. The development of atomic weapons based partly on his mass-energy equivalence equation creates profound moral anguish for Einstein, who realizes that his abstract theoretical insights have unleashed destructive forces beyond anything he ever imagined. When news of Hiroshima reached Princeton, Einstein's secretary heard him murmur, "Oy vey," in despair. The equation E equals mc squared had been a thing of beauty, revealing nature's deep unity. Now it was the key to weapons that could end civilization. Though Einstein's direct contribution to the Manhattan Project was minimal, his political views made him a security risk. His physics had made it possible. The transformation of matter into energy, once a theoretical curiosity, now manifested as mushroom clouds and radiation burns. Einstein threw himself into peace activism with desperate energy, calling for world government and international control of atomic weapons. But the genie couldn't be returned to its bottle. The same physics that promised unlimited clean energy also enabled unlimited destruction. In his darker moments, Einstein wondered if intellectual curiosity itself was humanity's tragic flaw, driving us to discover truths we lack the wisdom to handle. His letter to President Roosevelt urging American development of atomic weapons represents one of the most consequential scientific communications in history, though Einstein will later call this decision one of his greatest regrets. Written in 1939 at the urging of Leo Szilard, who feared Nazi Germany might develop atomic weapons first. The letter carried Einstein's prestigious signature to ensure Roosevelt's attention. The prose was careful, explaining that recent discoveries in nuclear physics made bombs of unprecedented power theoretically possible. Einstein knew the physics but agonized over the implications. His pacifist convictions warred with the horrifying possibility of Hitler obtaining such weapons first. In the end, fear of Nazi atomic bombs overcame his reluctance to promote weapons development. The letter succeeded beyond all expectations, catalyzing the Manhattan Project that would consume billions of dollars and the efforts of thousands of scientists. When Germany surrendered before developing atomic weapons, Einstein realized his letter had been based on false premises. The weapons created to stop Hitler were instead used against Japan, opening an age of nuclear terror that Einstein would spend his remaining years trying to contain. The post-war years find Einstein increasingly isolate. Einstein's theories transform our understanding of the cosmos itself, as astronomers discover that the universe began in a Big Bang, precisely as his general relativity equations predicted, revealing that space and time themselves have a cosmic history. The same mathematics that described light bending around the sun now tells the story of existence itself, how all of space and time emerged from a singularity smaller than an atom, expanding and cooling to create the vast cosmos we inhabit. When Einstein first applied his field equations to the universe as a whole, he couldn't have imagined they were describing a dynamic, evolving cosmos with a definite beginning. Yet that's exactly what Belgian priest-physicist Georges Lemaitre discovered in Einstein's own equations, proposing what he called the primeval atom from which everything emerged. Einstein initially resisted this idea, but the mathematics spoke with clarity that couldn't be denied. Today, cosmologists use his equations to model the universe's evolution with breathtaking precision, tracing cosmic history from the first fraction of a second through billions of years of expansion and structure formation. The discovery that space itself is expanding, carrying galaxies apart like raisins in rising bread, emerges naturally from Einstein's geometric view of gravity. His equations don't just describe how objects move through space, they reveal that space itself has a history, a beginning, and perhaps an end. The GPS satellites orbiting Earth today depend critically on Einstein's insights about time dilation, as their atomic clocks must be adjusted for both special and general relativistic effects to maintain the precision necessary for accurate navigation. Each satellite carries atomic clocks accurate to billionths of a second. Yet without Einstein's corrections, GPS would accumulate errors of several miles per day. The satellites move fast enough that special relativity slows their clocks by about 7 microseconds daily, while their altitude places them in weaker gravity, where general relativity makes their clocks run faster by 45 microseconds daily. The net effect, 38 microseconds per day, might seem trivial, but it would render GPS useless for navigation within hours. Engineers must program these relativistic corrections into every GPS satellite before launch, a practical application of Einstein's most abstract theories. Every time someone uses their phone to find directions or track a delivery, they're relying on the same equations Einstein developed while imagining riding alongside light beams. The mundane act of finding the nearest coffee shop depends on understanding how gravity warps time itself, a connection between daily life and cosmic truth that would have delighted Einstein. His prediction of gravitational waves, ripples in space-time itself, finally receives direct confirmation in 2015. A century after Einstein first proposed that accelerating masses should create disturbances that propagate at the speed of light. The Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory detected the collision of two black holes over 1 billion light-years away, their merger sending ripples through the fabric of space that stretched and compressed Earth by less than the width of a proton. Einstein had predicted these waves in 1916, but doubted they could ever be detected, considering the effect too subtle for any conceivable technology. Yet human ingenuity proved equal to the challenge, building instruments sensitive enough to measure distance changes smaller than atomic nuclei. The detected waves matched Einstein's predictions with stunning accuracy, their frequency and amplitude encoding information about the cosmic collision that created them. Each detection opens a new window on the universe, allowing astronomers to hear cosmic events through the vibrations of space-time itself. Black holes spiraling together, neutron stars colliding, perhaps even echoes from the Big Bang, all create gravitational waves that carry information across the cosmos at the speed of light, fulfilling Einstein's century-old prediction. The discovery of black holes throughout the universe validates Einstein's most extreme predictions about curved space-time, as astronomers observe matter spiraling into gravitational wells so deep that they warp space and time beyond recognition. What began as an unwelcome mathematical curiosity in Schwarzschild's solution to Einstein's equations has become one of astronomy's most studied phenomena. Supermassive black holes lurk at the centers of most galaxies, including our own Milky Way, their gravity orchestrating the dance of billions of stars. Stellar mass black holes, formed when massive stars exhaust their fuel and collapse, pepper the galaxy like cosmic sinkholes. Astronomers now routinely observe matter heating to millions of degrees as it spirals toward event horizons, converting gravitational energy into radiation with an efficiency that dwarfs nuclear fusion. The 2019 image of a black hole's event horizon, captured by the Event Horizon Telescope, showed humanity the face of Einstein's most extreme prediction, a dark shadow surrounded by glowing matter, exactly as general relativity predicted. These cosmic monsters, once thought too strange to exist, now appear fundamental to galaxy formation and evolution, their gravity shaping cosmic structure on the largest scales. Modern particle accelerators routinely confirm Einstein's mass-energy equivalence, as subatomic particles convert between matter and energy with precisely the efficiency his famous equation predicts, making E=mc2 one of the most thoroughly tested relationships in physics. At the Large Hadron Collider, protons accelerated to nearly light speed collide with energies that recreate conditions from the universe's first microseconds. In these collisions, kinetic energy transforms into new particles, quarks, leptons, bosons, following Einstein's equation with exquisite precision. A particle's mass times the speed of light squared equals exactly the energy needed to create it from nothing, just as Einstein predicted. Medical applications like PET scans depend on this equivalence, detecting gamma rays produced when antimatter electrons annihilate with ordinary matter in the patient's body. Nuclear medicine, particle therapy for cancer, even the carbon dating that reveals the age of ancient artifacts, all rely on the practical application of Einstein's theoretical insight. The equation that once seemed abstract now underpins technologies that save lives and unlock history, transforming from blackboard notation to everyday tool. The development of nuclear power and nuclear weapons demonstrates the awesome practical consequences of Einstein's theoretical insights, as humanity learns to harness the binding energy that holds atomic nuclei together. Inside every atomic nucleus, protons and neutrons cling together despite electromagnetic repulsion, held by forces that convert a tiny fraction of their mass into binding energy. When heavy nuclei split or light nuclei fuse, this binding energy releases according to Einstein's equation, producing millions of times more energy than chemical reactions. Nuclear power plants now generate electricity for millions, splitting uranium atoms in controlled chain reactions that would have seemed like magic before Einstein revealed the equivalence of mass and energy. The same physics enables nuclear weapons of terrifying destructive power, capable of converting mere kilograms of matter into city-destroying explosions. Einstein's equation doesn't just describe these processes, it defines their fundamental limits, setting the maximum energy available from any given mass. The peaceful atom and the mushroom cloud both emerge from the same simple relationship, mc2, a formula that reshaped both scientific understanding and human history. His cosmological constant, once dismissed as his greatest blunder, returns to prominence as astronomers discover that the universe's expansion is accelerating, driven by mysterious dark energy that behaves exactly like Einstein's discarded mathematical term. In 1998, observations of distant supernovae revealed that cosmic expansion wasn't slowing under gravity's pull as expected, but accelerating, pushed apart by an unknown force. Cosmologists reached for Einstein's abandoned constant, finding it perfectly described this cosmic acceleration. The blunder had been prescient, anticipating a phenomenon that wouldn't be discovered for 7 decades. Dark energy now dominates cosmological models, comprising nearly 70% of the universe's energy density. Its nature remains one of physics' deepest mysteries. Is it truly a cosmological constant, an inherent property of space itself? Or does it vary with time, perhaps connected to quantum fields filling the vacuum? Einstein couldn't have imagined that his aesthetic addition to preserve a static universe would instead describe a dynamic cosmos accelerating toward an empty future. The constant he introduced and abandoned in shame now appears in every cosmological equation, a reminder that even Einstein's mistakes contained profound truths. The search for Einstein's unified field theory continues in modern string theory and quantum gravity research, as physicists still pursue his dream of describing all fundamental forces within a single mathematical framework. Einstein spent his final 3 decades seeking equations that would unite gravity with electromagnetism, unaware that 2 additional forces, the strong and weak nuclear forces, awaited discovery. Today's physicists face an even grander challenge, seeking theories that encompass all 4 forces while reconciling general relativity with quantum mechanics. String theory proposes that fundamental particles are actually tiny vibrating strings in 10 or 11 dimensions, their different vibrational modes creating the diverse particles we observe. Loop quantum gravity attempts to quantize spacetime itself, suggesting space consists of discrete loops at the smallest scales. Both approaches trace their intellectual lineage to Einstein's geometric vision, seeking to describe all forces as manifestations of geometry in higher dimensions. Though success remains elusive, thousands of brilliant minds continue Einstein's quest, convinced that nature's fundamental laws must possess the unity and beauty he always sought. His influence extends far beyond physics into philosophy, as Einstein's insights about the relativity of space and time force humanity to reconsider basic assumptions about the nature of reality and our place within the cosmic order. Before Einstein, space and time seemed like the fixed stage upon which cosmic drama unfolded. His theories revealed them as active participants, bending and flexing in response to matter and energy. This shift from absolute to relative framework challenged not just physics, but fundamental philosophical categories. If simultaneity is relative, what does this mean for causation? If time flows differently in different gravitational fields, how do we define now across the universe? Philosophers grapple with these questions, exploring how relativity impacts concepts of identity, free will, and consciousness. Einstein showed that common sense, evolved for survival on Earth's surface, fails when extended to cosmic scales or extreme conditions. This humbling realization that human intuition provides limited access to ultimate truth influences fields from epistemology to theology, forcing us to question assumptions that once seemed self-evident. The Einstein field equations become the foundation for modern cosmology, enabling scientists to model the universe's evolution from the Big Bang through the formation of galaxies, stars, and planets that make life possible. These 10-coupled differential equations, relating the curvature of spacetime to its energy content, contain within their mathematical structure the entire history of the cosmos. Cosmologists use supercomputers to solve these equations under different conditions, simulating how tiny quantum fluctuations in the early universe grew into the vast cosmic web of galaxies we observe today. The equations predict how dark matter clumps under gravity, providing scaffolding for ordinary matter to collect and form stars. They describe how dark energy accelerates expansion, determining the universe's ultimate fate, from the first fraction of a second after the Big Bang through the eventual heat death trillions of years hence. Einstein's equations chart cosmic evolution with mathematical precision. Every galaxy, every star, every planet exists because matter and space-time dance together according to the choreography encoded in these equations. His work on Brownian motion helps establish statistical mechanics as a fundamental tool for understanding complex systems, from molecular behavior in gases to the fluctuations that drive modern financial markets. Einstein's analysis of pollen grains jittering in water didn't just prove atoms exist, it showed how microscopic randomness creates macroscopic patterns. His mathematical framework for describing random walks now appears throughout science and beyond. Biologists use it to model how proteins fold and how populations spread. Economists apply similar mathematics to stock price movements and market volatility. Climate scientists employ statistical mechanics to understand how countless molecular interactions produce weather patterns and climate change. The same equations Einstein derived for botanical observations now help design computer algorithms, optimize telecommunications networks, and predict traffic flow. His insight that predictable large-scale behavior emerges from unpredictable microscopic events laid foundations for understanding complexity across disciplines. From the random motion of molecules to the collective behavior of human societies, Einstein's statistical approach reveals order within apparent chaos. The photoelectric effect research that earned Einstein his Nobel Prize becomes the foundation for countless modern technologies, from solar panels that convert sunlight into electricity to the photodetectors that enable digital cameras. Every solar cell operates on Einstein's principle that light delivers energy in discrete packets, each photon carrying enough energy to liberate an electron from its atomic bonds. This quantum mechanism, which Einstein explained in 1905, now powers satellites, calculators, and increasingly entire electrical grids as solar technology advances. Digital cameras in phones and professional equipment rely on photoelectric sensors, where incoming photons create electrical signals proportional to light intensity. Photomultiplier tubes, based on cascading photoelectric effects, detect single photons in applications from medical imaging to particle physics experiments. Even the humble photocopier depends on photoelectric properties of special materials. Einstein's minor paper on the photoelectric effect, overshadowed by relativity in popular imagination, arguably impacts daily life more directly than his more famous theories. The quantum revolution he reluctantly initiated continues transforming technology in ways that would astonish even Einstein's imaginative mind. His thought experiments about riding light beams and falling elevators become pedagogical tools that help new generations of students grasp the counterintuitive implications of relativistic physics. Physics teachers worldwide invoke Einstein's mental imagery to make abstract concepts tangible. Students imagine themselves in Einstein's freely falling elevator, experiencing weightlessness that reveals gravity's true nature as curved space-time rather than a force. They picture racing alongside light beams, discovering why nothing can exceed light speed. These thought experiments bypass mathematical complexity to reach conceptual understanding, following Einstein's own path to discovery. Modern variations include twins separating at relativistic speeds, demonstrating time dilation through human drama rather than equations. Spaceships approaching light speed show length contraction and mass increase through vivid scenarios. Virtual reality now allows students to experience these thought experiments immersively, flying through curved space-time or watching time dilate in real-time simulations. Einstein's gift for translating mathematical truth into imaginable scenarios continues educating new physicists, ensuring his insights remain accessible to each generation. The twin paradox and other relativistic effects predicted by Einstein's theories are now routinely observed in cosmic ray studies and particle accelerator experiments, confirming that time dilation is a fundamental feature of our universe. Muons created when cosmic rays strike Earth's atmosphere live only microseconds, too brief to reach ground-level detectors according to classical physics. Yet we detect them abundantly because their high speed dilates time from their perspective, allowing them to survive the journey. Particle accelerators push this effect to extremes. Particles moving at 99.999% light speed experience time thousands of times slower than laboratory clocks. GPS satellites, astronauts on the International Space Station, even airline pilots experience measurable time dilation, aging slightly slower than Earthbound humans. These aren't theoretical curiosities, but measured realities, confirmed to extraordinary precision. The universe truly operates according to Einstein's strange rules, where motion and gravity alter time's flow. Each experimental confirmation reinforces that our intuitive notion of universal time is simply wrong. Time is personal, local, dependent on each observer's motion and gravitational environment. His vision of gravity as curved space-time revolutionizes our understanding of extreme astronomical objects, from neutron stars whose density warps space to the supermassive black holes that anchor galactic centers. Neutron stars pack more mass than our sun into spheres just miles across, creating gravitational fields so intense that time visibly slows on their surfaces. Mountains on neutron stars can't exceed millimeters in height before gravity crushes them flat. Their escape velocity approaches half-light speed, and their rotation can reach hundreds of revolutions per second without flying apart. Supermassive black holes, millions or billions of times our sun's mass, bend space-time so severely that they drag space itself around as they rotate. Gas falling into these monsters heats to billions of degrees, outshining entire galaxies. Gravitational lensing by these massive objects creates cosmic magnifying glasses, allowing astronomers to see galaxies from the universe's infancy. Einstein's geometric theory provides the only framework capable of describing these extremes, where Newton's gravity fails completely. The precision tests of general relativity using pulsar timing and planetary radar ranging achieve accuracy levels that would have amazed Einstein, confirming his theory's predictions to better than 1 part in a trillion. Pulsars, rapidly spinning neutron stars emitting regular radio pulses, serve as cosmic clocks precise enough to detect gravitational waves through tiny variations in pulse arrival times. Binary pulsars spiraling together lose energy exactly as Einstein's equations predict, matching theory to 14 decimal places. Radar signals bounced off planets return with delays that precisely match relativistic predictions, accounting for both the sun's gravitational field and the motion of all bodies involved. Lunar laser ranging, using reflectors placed by Apollo astronauts, tests whether Earth and Moon fall toward the Sun with identical acceleration, confirming Einstein's equivalence principle to extraordinary precision. These tests push measurement technology to its limits, yet general relativity passes every challenge. No deviation from Einstein's predictions has ever been confirmed, despite decades of increasingly sensitive searches. His insights about the equivalence principle that gravitational and inertial mass are identical inspire ongoing searches for violations that might reveal new physics beyond Einstein's classical geometric description of gravity. This principle, which Einstein called his happiest thought, remains mysterious despite its conceptual simplicity. Why should the mass that resists acceleration be exactly equal to the mass that creates and responds to gravity? Einstein built general relativity on this foundation, but couldn't explain why it's true. Modern experiments test the equivalence principle with extraordinary precision, dropping different materials in vacuum chambers, comparing atomic transitions in different gravitational fields, even planning space missions to test whether objects fall identically in orbit. Any detected violation would revolutionize physics, suggesting new forces or properties of matter. String theory and other quantum gravity approaches predict tiny violations at scales current technology can't detect. The search continues with ever greater sensitivity, probing whether Einstein's founding assumption holds exactly or merely approximates a deeper truth. The technological civilization of the 21st century depends fundamentally on Einstein's discoveries, from the quantum mechanics of computer chips to the relativistic corrections required for satellite communication and global positioning systems. Every transistor in every computer operates through quantum mechanical effects Einstein helped discover, controlling electron flow through semiconductor materials. Lasers, whose operation Einstein predicted through his work on stimulated emission, enable fiber optic communication, precision manufacturing. As we drift toward sleep tonight, we carry with us the remarkable story of Albert Einstein, a curious child who dared to question the nature of light and time, whose revolutionary insights revealed that our universe is far stranger and more beautiful than anyone had ever imagined. From that 5-year-old boy, mesmerized by a compass needle, to the gentle genius whose equations unveiled the cosmos, Einstein's journey reminds us that the greatest discoveries often come from those brave enough to see the world with fresh eyes. His legacy lives on in every GPS signal that guides us home, in every star whose light bends through curved space-time, in every atom that transforms matter into energy according to his elegant equation. The universe he revealed to us operates not through rigid mechanical laws, but through a cosmic dance where space and time interweave, where matter tells space-time how to curve, and curved space-time tells matter how to move. This profound mathematical beauty underlies everything, from the smallest quantum particle to the vast expansion of the cosmos itself. In the gentle darkness, let Einstein's journey inspire your own dreams of discovery and wonder. Perhaps tomorrow you'll notice something others have overlooked, ask a question no one else has thought to pose, or simply pause to marvel at the mysterious forces that guide compass needles and orchestrate the stars. Einstein showed us that childlike curiosity, combined with fearless questioning and patient dedication, can unlock nature's deepest secrets. His life teaches us that genius isn't about having all the answers, but about asking better questions, about maintaining wonder in the face of the universe's vast mystery. As you rest tonight, know that Einstein's equations continue their silent work, keeping satellites synchronized, describing black holes at the universe's edge, and encoding the history of existence itself in mathematical poetry. Sleep well, dear listener, and may your rest be filled with the peaceful certainty that the universe, however mysterious, operates according to laws of profound mathematical beauty, waiting patiently for the next curious mind to discover them.